Right now I am walking along the bank of the ancient Neman River. And here, in this exact moment, all the forces of the universe are meeting in one place. Earth, water, air, fire, and ether. But most people would only see a river here, sand, forest, a nice place to pitch a tent. The ancients saw something completely different. They saw a living system of power. Last night I slept here, in a tent. The fire was burning all night. The water of the Neman was right beside me. The earth was under my feet. The air was moving all around me. And at some point, all of it came together in ether. The space began to respond. And what happened that night showed me very clearly how the elements actually work. So don't play this video in the background. Stay with me until the end, because together we are going to walk through all 5 elements. First, through earth, to feel your foundation. Then, through water, to awaken the flow. Then, through air, to clear your mind and your breath. Then, through fire, to burn away what no longer belongs. And in the end, we'll enter ether, the place where the world tree begins to awaken. My name is Orlov. For more than 10 years, I've been exploring places of power, runes, the crystals of the earth, and the ancient Slavic tradition. Let's go. The funny thing is, people often want to jump straight into ether, straight into the higher energies, the gods, the visions, the big glowing experience. They want the ancestors to walk out of the forest, hand them a sacred staff and say, "That's it, brother, you're chosen now." But the person himself is standing there like a plastic bag in the wind. One piece of bad news blows him away. One comment on the internet breaks through his whole system. Someone looks at him the wrong way, and that's it. The day is ruined. The system falls apart. And you look at that and think, what ether are you talking about? First, you need to learn how to stand on the ground, honestly. Because this whole story with the elements begins in the most boring way possible. Not with lightning, not with portals, not with some grand mystical state. It begins with one simple thing. Can you actually feel where you are? When I came to the Neman yesterday, it wasn't like I jumped out of the car and immediately began some great ritual on the riverbank. Of course not. First, it was a normal human situation. I had to figure out where to stay, where I could sit by the fire comfortably, where to put the tent so I wouldn't spend the whole night cursing my own genius because I'd chosen a route under my back, wind blowing into my side, smoke in my face, and all my spirituality ending in 10 minutes. And strangely enough, this is where contact with Earth begins. Because Earth is very simple. It won't speak to you in some beautiful voice from the sky. It won't turn on special effects. It simply shows you through the body. Here it's calm, and here something is off. But you can only feel that when you've turned your head off at least a little. Modern people live almost entirely in their heads. Even when they come into nature, they stay in the phone, in conversations, in music, in their thoughts, in plans, in problems. The body is here, but the person is anywhere except here. That's why he can't feel the place. He comes, throws up the tent wherever, then spends the whole night uncomfortable. mosquitoes, smoke, damp air, back pain. In the morning he wakes up angry, stiff, half dead and says, "I don't know, nature just didn't work for me." What does nature have to do with it? You didn't even make peace with the ground. And I don't mean you have to bow to every bush and whisper, "Mother Earth, may I please place my tent here?" No, don't go crazy. But there is such a thing as simple respect for a place. You did not come into empty space. You came into a living field. And if you want that field to work with you, the first thing you need to do is stop dragging your city noise into it. I noticed this a long time ago. When a place accepts you, the body calms down by itself. The legs become heavier. The breath drops lower. The mind stops chewing on everything. It's not like you suddenly become enlightened. No. You simply get a normal human feeling. All right, I'm here. And that alone is already a lot. Because most people are not here at all. They are either in the past, or in the future, or in the news, or in someone else's opinion, or in their own fantasy about how one day they'll finally start a new life. Earth brings you back very simply and very directly. You are here. Stand properly. Breathe properly. Stop pretending to be a cosmic magician when the first gust of wind can knock you off balance. And this is where the first element begins, with Earth, with foundation, with the simple fact that something is finally holding you. Only after that can you move forward, because next comes water. And water is a completely different story. Earth holds you, but water starts moving everything you brought here with you. And once you stood on the ground, even just a little, the next element begins to wake up. Water. And water is a completely different story. Earth holds you, but water starts moving everything inside you that got stuck. Here on the Neman, you can feel it very clearly. A big river is not just something beautiful to look at. Sure, it's beautiful. The forest, the riverbank, the birds, the water flowing. You can shoot a nice video, post it somewhere and write "Harmony with nature." But if you go a little deeper, the river starts opening you up very quickly. You sit beside it, you look at the water, and at first it seems like nothing is happening. It just flows, and flows, and flows. But then something inside you starts moving too. Thoughts come up, emotions rise. You start remembering old conversations, old decisions, old resentment. Things you should have closed a long time ago. And you sit there thinking, great, I came here to relax. But that is water. Water doesn't just shine in the sun. Water moves. It softens everything you've been cementing inside yourself for years. It shows you where life is flowing and where you've been stuck for 100 years, telling yourself, well, it's just not the right time yet. Water is very honest. You can tell everyone that you're fine. You can put on a smart face. You can act calm. And then you sit by a big river for 20 minutes. And that's it. Inside, you already know where you're flowing. And where there's a swamp inside your life. And this is where many people can't handle it. They immediately need to turn on music, open the phone, text someone, pour a drink, start talking. Because if you become silent near water, it quickly starts showing you yourself. That's why people often fill nature with noise. Not because they're having that much fun, but because silence by the water can hit harder than any conversation. This is why, in the ancient tradition, a river was never just a river. It was a crossing, a border, a current between the old state and the new one. And this is exactly what I talk about in detail in my book, The Secret Guide. Not as some pretty mystical fantasy, but as a map, a way for a person to start seeing the living system of power behind ordinary places. A QR code will appear on the screen now. You can scan it with your phone, download the book, read it, and enjoy it. The link to the book will also be in the description below this video. But here on the Neman, you can feel it even without the book. Just sit by the water and try not to run away from yourself for a few minutes. Because water will not entertain you. It simply flows. And if you become quiet beside it, it starts moving your system. Sometimes gently, sometimes unpleasantly. But almost always, after water, something inside becomes more honest. Earth gave you foundation. Water starts the movement. And if you didn't run away, if you didn't drown it out with noise, if you didn't hide inside your phone, then the next transition begins. Because when water gathers enough movement, it rises higher. It becomes air. And when water starts moving, at some point it rises higher. It becomes lighter, and air begins to turn on. You can see this very clearly in nature. Water evaporates, it rises, it becomes mist, clouds, humidity. The current is no longer just flowing along the ground, it begins to rise. And with a person it works in almost the same way. First, Earth somehow put you back in place. Then water started moving what had been sitting inside you for too long. And then suddenly air appears. And this is not just, well, we breathe some fresh air. No, air is when your head finally gets some space. You're walking along the riverbank, the Neman beside you, forest, birds, wind, water splashing somewhere. And at some point you catch yourself realizing that your mind is no longer eking itself alive. Because the city mind is a meat grinder. Something is always spinning in there. Work, money, plans, news, messages. Who said what, who didn't say what. Where you need to be, what you need to solve. Even when a person is silent, there is still a whole marketplace inside his head. 100 voices talking at once. And air begins to carry all of that out. Not sharply, not like fire. More like ventilation. It airs out the stale, heavy pressure from your head. That's why sometimes in nature it's enough to simply breathe properly. And you already become a slightly different person. Not because some miracle happened, but because you finally stopped breathing your own internal garbage. In the city, a person often doesn't breathe air, he breathes stress. But here the air is different. It comes from the water, from the forest, from the earth, from the space itself. And if you don't poison it with a speaker, swearing, cigarettes and endless talking, it starts to work. I felt this very clearly yesterday. During the day the air was one thing, hot, loud, summery. But at night it became something completely different, deeper, quieter, denser. You sit by the fire, the Neman is nearby, darkness is falling. And suddenly you realize that everything around you is breathing. The wind, the water, the birds, the crackling fire, the forest. These are no longer separate sounds. It feels like one big living organism. And this is where air begins to lift your state. After water, something inside has already started to move. And air picks it up and carries it higher. Thoughts become cleaner. Breathing becomes deeper. Attention becomes wider. And the funniest thing is, people are often afraid of this silence. They are used to someone talking inside them all the time. And then suddenly it gets quiet, unfamiliar, almost awkward. And right away they want to grab the phone, turn on music, start talking to someone, anything, just so they don't have to be alone with this air. But that's exactly where the mistake is. Because if you don't run away, air begins to gather you in a completely different way. Earth gave you foundation. Water moved what was stuck. And air begins to raise the frequency. And when air accelerates even more, it stops being just breath. It begins to turn into fire. And fire is a completely different story. Because fire does not ventilate. Fire burns. Earth holds you. Water moves you. Air clears your head. But fire does not babysit you. Fire burns. And the fire at night is not just a beautiful thing to sit beside. Although, of course, it is beautiful. Darkness all around, the river nearby, the forest moving in the wind, sparks flying upward, wood cracking in the flames. You sit there staring into the fire like it's some ancient television. But if you go a little deeper, fire starts working with you in a very direct way. It gathers your attention. By the water, you can drift away into thoughts. On the earth, you can just lie down and zone out. In the air, you can dissolve. But by the fire, it's hard to lie to yourself for long. You sit there, you look into the flames, and suddenly you understand. Enough. Enough carrying this garbage inside. Enough chewing on old conversations. Enough holding on to things that should have been burned a long time ago. Fire does not explain. Fire does not persuade. It simply shows you. Either you burn properly, or something inside you is eating you alive because you still haven't let it go. And last night I felt this very clearly. The fire burned all night. Not like a barbecue fire for sausages, but like the center of the whole space. Around it, the river, the earth, the air, the night, some distant voices, the noise of other people somewhere nearby. And the fire stood in the center and slowly gathered all of it together. And the longer it burned, the stronger the feeling became that a circle was forming around it. Not a drawn circle, not something theatrical, a living circle. Here is the fire. Here the space is gathered. Here this is no longer just camping in nature. Here work is happening. And fire begins to cleanse. And it is not always gentle. Water can bring up the old things slowly, gradually. But fire can hit you straight in the head. Look, this is unnecessary. Burn this. It's time to end this. That's why many people are actually afraid of real fire. Everyone loves a campfire. Photos, romance, songs with a guitar. But fire as a force is something completely different. It demands a decision. It does not let you complain forever. It does not let you float around in your swamp. It does not let you keep telling yourself fairy tales about how one day everything will change. Fire asks one very simple question. Are you burning or are you just smoldering? And if earth put you on your feet, water moved what was stuck, and air cleared your head, then fire begins to accelerate the whole system. Strength appears, focus appears, And suddenly, understanding is no longer enough. It is time to do something. And when fire reaches its limit, it opens the next door, ether. And ether is where the space itself begins to answer. Because ether is no longer about simply sitting by the water, breathing some air, looking into the fire, and becoming a little calmer. Ether is when all of it suddenly comes together. The Neman is flowing, the fire is burning, the wind is moving, the earth is holding, the night is all around. And at some point you realize, this is no longer just nature. This is a system, a living one. And you are not just sitting next to it, you are inside it. This is where space stops being a background. It begins to participate. And last night I could see this very clearly. At first everything was just like a normal summer night. People came to relax, music somewhere, voices somewhere, someone yelling, someone someone drinking, someone trying to shout louder than the river and the forest, just the usual thing. People come to a living place of power and immediately try to turn it into a barbecue parking lot. And I was sitting by the fire, gathering my own state. Earth beneath me, water beside me, air around me, fire in the center. And when all of it began to close into one circuit, there was a very clear feeling. The place had found its axis. This is where what the tradition calls the world tree begins to turn on. Not as some pretty picture from a book, but as a vertical line that gathers the space. And when this vertical line turns on, unnecessary noise cannot hold for long. It either leaves, or quiets down, or shuts itself off. And that is more or less what happened. Little by little, everything began to calm down. The music disappeared, the voices faded. It was as if the people were switched off. Someone went to sleep, someone calmed down, someone simply stopped yelling. And the place became different, quieter, deeper, more gathered. I'm not saying I'm some great magician who showed up and defeated everyone with one look. No. But when the elements come together correctly, space really does begin to answer. And you don't see it in fantasies. You see it in the field around you. First you change, then the place changes. Then the people inside that place begin to change too, even if they have no idea what is happening. They simply become calmer, or they get sleepy, or they stop making noise. And for me, that is ether. When earth, water, air and fire gather into one whole, and space stops being a decoration. It becomes a living participant. And then the best part begins. Because in the morning, that space answered again. This time through people. And the funniest part started in the morning. During the night, everything had gone quiet. The place had gathered itself. The fire had burned down. The Neman was still flowing nearby. The air had become completely different, and it seemed like that was it. We sat, we worked, we cleared something out. Time to pack up and leave. But a living place does not work like that. When a space turns on, it often gives you feedback afterward. And not necessarily through some grand sign, not through lightning in the sky, not through a glowing portal. Sometimes it answers through an ordinary person who doesn't even understand what he just said. In the morning there were some neighbors nearby, just regular guys who had also spent the night not far from us. One of them looked like some kind of IT punk, a little hungover, standing there, smoking, slowly coming back to life after the night. And at one point he said, We had such good neighbors sleeping next to us. Just a normal phrase, nothing special. A person said it and that was it. But in that moment it really made me smile. Because for him it was just everyday talk. Like decent people were nearby, nobody bothered anyone, everything was fine. But on the level of the place it sounded completely different. As if the space said through him, yes, the contact happened. Everything is fine. You were not here like tourists who came to get drunk, blast music and yell over the river. You were here as people who at least heard the place. And I love moments like that. Because real magic often does not look magical at all. No special effects, no thunder, no forest spirits marching out information and beating drums. Just some guy in the morning with a tired face and a hangover says one sentence, and you understand. Yes, the place answered. If you are full of noise, you will miss it. You'll think, well, that's just a coincidence. He just said something. People just got quiet. It was just a nice morning. But if you are even a little bit in contact, you understand. No, this is not just a pile of random things. The place is speaking. Not in human language, but very clearly. And this is exactly why I travel to places like this. Not only for beautiful shots, although the shots here are obviously incredible, but for the living dialogue. When you come to the river not to consume nature, but to enter into contact with it. And then an ordinary night in a tent becomes a completely different story. On the surface, you simply slept on the riverbank, but in reality, you passed through the place, and the place passed through you. That is the difference between spending time in nature and actually touching power. And here's an important point. I'm not judging people who come into nature, make noise, drink, blast music, yell, run around and party. Not at all. Because I used to be exactly the same. Back in school, in college, in those early green years, we also went out into nature, to lakes, to forests, to river banks, with guitars, with music, with a box of vodka. With all that wild fun when you come to a living place, but you have absolutely no idea where you really are. These days, I don't drink anything stronger than kvass or kefir, but back then it was different. And the funny thing is, recently I started remembering the places we used to end up in, and I realized something hilarious. We were not going just anywhere. Many of those places later turned out to be near ancient settlements, near earth crystals, near strong energy points. Sometimes we were standing almost directly on a place of power, and in some cases, let's just say while drunk, I would wander off to pee in places where today I would walk in a completely different state. And now I look back at that and think, well, this is how space works. A person still understands nothing. He is not ready to come to a place of power consciously. He is not going to meditate. He is not going to work with the elements. He is not going to light a ritual fire. He is not going to call on the gods. Not even close. He just wants to party. But the forces above are like, all right, this one can only be dragged here by the ear for now. Fine, let him come like this. Let him come with a guitar and a box of vodka. At least his body will be in nature, near water, near forest, near earth, near fire. Because even that is better than nothing. That is also a step. Today, a person comes into nature to drink and yell songs. Tomorrow, maybe he comes a little quieter. He sits by the water, looks into the fire. Something clicks inside. And the day after tomorrow, who knows? Maybe he's out there with a drum, entering a trance somewhere, or lighting a fire for the gods. Why not? Everyone has their own path. So I don't have any anger toward people who don't feel anything. A person is simply at his own level. For now, he sees the river as a place to relax, the forest as a background, the fire as a barbecue grill, nature as a decoration. That's okay. But if there is already a call inside you for something more, then you will have to become a little quieter. Because a place of power does not shout. It will not compete with your phone, your speaker, and the marketplace inside your head. It speaks quietly. And when you stop making noise, the place begins to reveal itself. At first, barely, then stronger. And then, suddenly, you understand. The river is not just flowing. The wind is not just blowing. The fire is not just burning. They are speaking to you. And the question is no longer whether power exists. The question is whether you have grown enough to hear it. And if, after all of this, you have one thought, all right, but how do I feel this myself? It's actually very simple. The next time you come to a river, a forest, a lake, an ancient hill fort, or any living place, don't start making noise right away. That's it. You don't need to pretend to be some great shaman. You don't need to make a serious mystical face. You don't need to run through the forest looking for the portal. Just give the place a little time. 10 minutes. No phone, no music, no endless talking. I understand that for a modern person, this is already almost a heroic act. Because the hand automatically reaches for something, turn something on, text someone, film something, post something. But try it. You arrive, and you don't rush. Let the body understand where it has landed. Let the head calm down a little. If there is water nearby, let it start moving what is stuck inside you. Let the air blow through that endless city noise in your head. If you've made a fire, let it burn at least part of what you dragged here with you. And most importantly, don't try to squeeze a miracle out of the place. Don't sit there with a face like, well, where are the signs? Where is the power? Where is the world tree already? A place of power is not an ATM. You can't just insert a card and immediately withdraw energy. It is a living space. Sometimes it answers quickly, sometimes it stays silent. Sometimes, at first, it starts cleaning you so hard that you think, maybe I should have stayed home. But if you don't run away, if you don't cover everything with noise, little by little you begin to feel. At first very subtly, then stronger. And at some point, an ordinary walk stops being an ordinary walk. On the outside, you are just walking along the river, but inside, something is already changing. And that is when nature stops being a decoration. It becomes power again. Try it if you want. Don't try it if you don't. That's your choice. You can keep coming to places like this, turning on your speaker, grilling meat, and saying there is nothing special here. But the place will not become weaker because of that. You will simply walk past it again. So this was our little walk and talk today along the bank of the Neman. We walked, we looked at the river, the forest, the water, the fire, all this beauty. But in reality, we did not just walk along the river bank. We walked through the 5 elements. First, Earth. So you can finally stand in place and stop floating around inside your head. Then, water. To move what has become stagnant inside. Then, air. To clear your mind and exhale at least part of that city noise. Then, fire. To burn away what no longer belongs. And then, ether. When all of it comes together and space begins to answer. For me, nature is not a background. It is not just a place where you come, eat, sit, take a picture and leave. Although of course you can do that too, no problem. But if you look a little deeper, all of this is alive. The river is alive, the forest is alive, the fire is alive, the earth is alive, and the human being is alive too, even though in the city we sometimes forget that. My goal is not to force anyone to believe in anything. Believe it, don't believe it. Honestly, it doesn't matter. I am simply sharing how I feel it, how I work with it, how it turns on for me in places of power. And you decide for yourself. If it resonates, take it. If it doesn't, that's fine too. It just means it's not yours right now. If the topic of places of power, the elements, earth crystals, ancient points, and this living contact with space is interesting to you, download my book, The Secret Guide. A QR code will appear on the screen now. Scan it with your phone, download the book, read it and enjoy it. The link to the book will also be in the description below this video. Inside, I go much deeper into how to see more than just hills, rivers, forests and stones in ordinary places, and begin to recognize the living system of power behind them. And write in the comments, have you ever had something like this happen? You came into nature just to relax, but later realized something actually happened to you there. Maybe by a river, maybe in a forest, maybe by a fire, maybe at some old place where you didn't even understand why you were drawn there. I would honestly love to read those stories. And of course, if this video landed for you, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. But most importantly, write in the comments. Did you feel charged by today's walk and talk along the Neman? Did something clear out? Did something move? Did something turn on? Or did you simply become a little calmer? My name is Orlov. This was the ancient Neman, and I'll see you at the next place of power. Glory to Father Neman.